This week on Meet the Americans, the economies of the North and South, brought to you by Carissa Tiano and Sarah Rodriguez. Part 1. The North. Sam Slater was a British engineer specialized in textile mills. Sam Slater posed as a farmer to get to the United States illegally. He then created a string of textile mills, but the workers and apprentices got bored easily and would leave. To solve this problem, Slater created housing, a company store, and a credit system for the store. All of this attracted whole families to work at the mills. Eli Whitney was an inventor. Whitney invented water-powered factories and interchangeable parts, both of which led to mass production. Albert Gallatin was the Secretary of the Treasury. In 1810, he suggested that there were so few factories in the United States because farming was more attractive, the surplus of land compared to the population, the high price of labor, and the lack of investment. The Lowell system, created by Francis Cabot Lowell, a businessman from New England, hired young, unmarried women to work in textile mills, while the Rhode Island system, on the other hand, hired whole families and split the work between them. Sarah G. Bagley was a mill worker. She founded the Lowell Female Labor Reform Association, publicized the struggles of factory laborers, and changed the workday law from a maximum of 14 hours to a maximum of 10 hours of work a day. All of these are ways the labor unions improved the working conditions in the mid-1800s. Robert Fulton was an American inventor who created the steamboat. His design was well suited for river travel because it could head upstream. Steamboats impacted the economy because it increased trade and profits. Peter Cooper was the inventor of a small but powerful locomotive called the Tom Thumb. Railroads affected the U.S. economy by increasing trade, traveling, and profit. Railroads faced challenges such as terrain and the fact that they had to build them quickly with cheap materials. Samuel L. Morse was an inventor, and he perfected the telegraph and created Morse code to use on the telegraph. Many factories were now powered with steam, which means that they could be located anywhere. The telegraph was a good way to communicate over long distances. Catherine Green was a plantation owner, and her workers used a machine to remove seeds from cotton. Eli Whitney used this as a base for the cotton gin. After the cotton gin was created, the demand for slave labor and slave trade increased. Hinton Rowan Helper was a Southerner who encouraged industrial growth in the South. There were fewer industries in the South because farming was more appealing, and if there were industries, then they would be competing against the North and overseas industries. The social status of planters and yeomen differed because planters were rich white slave owners, while yeomen were simple men who farmed and worked alongside their slaves. Some white Southerners used religion to justify the practice of slavery by saying that God made some men to rule over others. Solomon Northup was a free African American who was kidnapped and served 12 years as a slave until he proved his identity. Slaveholders controlled slaves by whipping them. Life was different for the slaves living in the planter's home because they had better food, clothing, and shelter than the field hands, but mainly worked longer hours. Nat Turner was a slave from Southampton County, Virginia. Enslaved parents worked to make sure their children remembered their heritage by passing down family histories, African customs, and African traditions. The most violent U.S. slave revolt was Nat Turner's Rebellion in 1831. The rebellion led to the deaths of 60 white people and more than 100 slaves, including Nat Turner. It also resulted in stricter slave codes.
Created using Powtoon.